As always, The Simpsons was years and years ahead of the satirical politics that dominates our day, though it's not satire, it's reality. I enjoy this exchange, thinking about that, between RealClearPolitics.com's Phil Wegman and Karine Jean-Pierre, White House spokeswoman, when it was announced that Biden will, at some point in the not-too-distant future, be visiting East Palestine, East Palestine, Ohio. This exchange between Wegman and her.
And then next month, when the president is in East Palestine, will he drink the water there?
I mean, look, what I can tell you is the president's focus has been to do everything that he can to support this community from day one. We get what's going on the ground. We understand what's going on. That's why we've had the EPA. That's why we had DOT. That's why we had HHS. That's why we've had FEMA on the ground. This is not about some sort of like political stunt here. This is not what this is about. This is about this president being a president for everyone and showing up for this community. That's what this is about.
Johnny on the spot a year later. But I mean, it's just so reminds me of when Mr. Burns ran for governor, and he had the photo op, canned dinner at the Simpson household, and of course, this is when Marge sprung fish for dinner from the river outside the nuclear plant that he owns.
I remember this one.
Smells delightful.
Uh-oh.
Oh.
All right, three-eyed fish. Can I have your plate, Mr. Burns?
Yeah, and that tubed his gubernatorial campaign in The Simpsons. So, I mean, just borrowing from Phil Wegman, I hope somebody, when the big guy, Mr. 10%, shows up, offers him a glass of freshly squeezed water from the faucets of East Palestine.
Oh, you know he's not going in anyone's house to even be tempted to drink that water. They would not let him touch that. And why even bother going? I mean, it's just so such a photo op.
Because he cares.
Yeah.
That's why. Of course.
Does anybody live there anymore? I mean, I know there's still some business owners there, but most people have moved out.
Palestine. It's like Frankenstein. John Hinderaker is president of the Center for the American Experiment, contributor to Powerline at PowerlineBlog.com. He joins us now. John, thanks as always for being with us. Were you moved by Karine Jean-Pierre's description of the impetus for president to finally get over to East Palestine, Ohio?
So, Dan, when Joe Biden is done in East Palestine, he can come out to Golden Valley, Minnesota, and survey the wreckage of my office, which was firebombed over the weekend, presumably by leftists.
Yeah, I was reading about that. You were you in D.C. when this happened? Because I know you were attending the Mark Stein trial about the hockey stick.
I was in D.C. for part of this week. This actually happened Saturday night, about 2 o'clock in the morning. That'd be Sunday morning. So the building was deserted. It's a good-sized building, but not very high, only about 3 stories. A few miles west of downtown Minneapolis. About 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody broke into our building, and they started 2 separate fires. On the ground floor, they started a fire in the corridor outside my office. Now, Center of the American Experiment is the main conservative organization in Minnesota. We have 22 people working in that office, so it's pretty good sized. And then we sublease space to a group called Take Charge, which reaches out primarily to young black people, encourages them to be self-sufficient, don't be victims, be victors, and so on. So we sublease that space to them. So in the corridor between our office and the Take Charge office, these arsonists started one fire. And then on the 3rd floor, they started a completely different fire at the office of the Upper Midwest Law Center, which is a conservative public interest law firm, which I'm on the board of. They either started that fire right outside the UMLC office, or they may have broken the door down and started the fire inside that office. It is completely destroyed.
Well, you're so lucky because I know a lot of people work late night. I mean, that nobody was in the building at the time.
Yeah, apparently nobody was in the building, but fortunately somebody saw the fire, called the fire department. They got there very fast. They got the fire extinguished. But it's going to be months before any part of that building reopens, and I don't know whether we will ever be able to reoccupy our offices. We may be. I'm trying to sort that out with the building, the insurance companies, and so forth. But in the meantime, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is investigating the fire per se, causes of the fire, and the FBI is looking for the perpetrators. There's no question it was arson. That's a given.
That's what they've concluded. They've already concluded that.
Oh yeah, no, it's an arson investigation. And frankly, it's obvious when you start one fire on the ground floor, different fire on the third floor. That's not going to be a coincidence. Right. And that building is full of small businesses. There are psychologists and chiropractors and financial advisors and so forth. And they didn't target any of those people. They targeted the three conservative organizations. It's the three leading conservative organizations in Minnesota. So I am working closely with the FBI to try to identify potential suspects.
Well, do you have a list of potential
Catholic.
suspects?
Yeah.
Oh.
I say that again?
I said I hope you're not Catholic. So the FBI? Do you think they're going to devote the same level of intensity and resources that they devoted to finding the pro-abortion types that firebomb the offices of pro-life centers and pro-family groups and so forth?
Well, I hope it's not the same, Dan. I mean, so far it seems like we've had a good cooperative relationship with them. We have a camera inside our office, and we have a door, but it's pointed toward the door. There's a glass panel, just a thin glass panel next to the door, and I understand that our camera, even though these people didn't actually enter our office, they're trying to get 2 for 1, by starting the fire in the corridor. But I believe that our camera actually caught some of the arson action through that glass panel. And the only way you can really get to our building, there's a highway and then there's a frontage road, next to the highway. And you can't really get to our building except on that frontage road. There are cameras on that road. And the number of cars on that road at 2 o'clock in the morning, on a Saturday night is not large. And so, it may well be that license plate numbers can be identified. And so I have no idea whether these arsonists will be caught or not, but it's a possibility.
Well, just in time for election season. And if people want to see the damage that's done, go to powerlineblog.com and you could see it there. So are you afraid for your own personal safety? Do you have any security with you?
Amy, I don't have any security. I get death threats periodically, but who doesn't? Everybody who's active publicly in the conservative movement, periodically will get a death threat. And I've sent a couple of those out to the FBI, but I don't think it's one of those people. I think it's more likely there are a lot of possibilities. It could be eco-terrorism. We're very active in the energy space. We've done energy work in 16 states as well as D.C. Opposing wind and solar projects. Eco-terrorism is a possibility. We're very pro-law enforcement. After the George Floyd riots, we put up 35 billboards around the Twin Cities saying support our police and did a petition campaign and so on. 7 times those billboards got defaced by people who left behind the Antifa symbol. So, Antifa types are a possibility. We've opposed public sector unions. That's a possibility. We've announced that our annual dinner speaker this year is going to be Naftali Bennett, the former Prime Minister of Israel. And so pro-Hamas people conceivably, could have done this. We've been very harshly critical of the current Tim Walz administration in Minnesota, so maybe just a couple of rabid Democrats. I don't know, but there are a lot of possibilities. No, I don't worry about my own security, but we will be talking to our landlord about about possible security upgrades going forward.
Again, I mean, you've got maybe Ilhan Omar can make an introduction for you to Cori Bush, and she can tell you all about cobbling together security details.
Well, I'm not sure I've got quite the budget that some of those folks do.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. I'm obviously it's terrible that occurred. I'm sorry to hear that. I assume, thanks to the digital age, your people will be able to work remotely and you'll be able to keep the work at American Experiment going. Yeah,
we're a highly collaborative organization. We can work remotely for a while, but at the end of the day, we need to have an office. We need to be together. So I'm going to be looking. Our building is part of a 3-building complex. I know there are some vacancies within that complex. I just haven't had a chance to do this yet, but I'll be talking to our landlord about maybe finding, probably not all in one place, but maybe in a couple of locations in the same complex, some temporary office space.
Since you invoked George Floyd, we were talking about crime in metropolitan areas still, as you guys write about as well. And just we had a big announcement yesterday in Chicago. The mayor and the governor, we're going to, instead of spending $200 million a year on violence prevention, it's going to be $400 million to try and reduce homicides by 50% over 5 years. And you're hearing the same thing in D.C., in Seattle, in Austin, Baltimore. It's not, we can't arrest our way out of it. We can't prosecute our way out of it. We have to spend our way out of it, essentially. And I wonder what sort of status update you can give us about Minneapolis.
Well, we're in a terrible situation here. After the George Floyd trial where the chief of police testified against Derek Chauvin, it's kind of hard for the city of Minneapolis to hire police officers, And just recently, within the last days, we've had another incident where the Hennepin County attorney, Hennepin County is Minneapolis plus, Hennepin County attorney ran on a platform of not prosecuting criminals, and she's been true to her word. She has now charged a state highway patrolman with second-degree murder in an incident arising out of a very dangerous encounter with a convicted felon illegally in possession of a handgun. And so, here we go again with the authorities prosecuting the police instead of the criminals. This time, though, it may be different. He's getting a lot of public support. He's hired a very good, very aggressive lawyer. And maybe it'll be a turning point. But in the meantime, it's just very difficult for the police departments in this area to hire officers.
I don't know if we've talked to you since we talked to Liz Cullen, who is the investigative journalist who did that Fall of Minneapolis documentary. But I wonder what your reaction to that documentary was and what kind of impact it's having on understanding of the George Floyd incident in Minneapolis.
Yeah, well, it certainly has been widely viewed. I think there are aspects of it that are debatable, specifically in connection with the George Floyd incident. I think that the way it traces the horror of the George Floyd riots and the impact they've had in the city of Minneapolis, which has been devastating, I think is right on the mark, and it's something that we who live here have seen with our own eyes. The fact that they burned down, the police were told to evacuate the 3rd Precinct station and abandon it to the rioters, and the rioters burned it down. It hasn't been rebuilt to this day. That was a horrible, horrible moment in the history of law enforcement in the United States, and it's one from which this area has not recovered.
John Hinderaker,
do you see it recovering anytime soon, though, or do you think it's just gone forever?
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of people who, they still live in this metropolitan area, but they don't go into Minneapolis. That's fairly common.
Yeah, fairly common in Chicago, too. John Hinderaker, president of the Center of the American Experiment, contributor to Powerline, powerlineblog.com. John, good luck with that situation. Keep us updated about, the status on that investigation, as well as getting new digs for the Center for the American Experiment, too.
Will do. Thanks a lot, Dan. Bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm glad you're safe. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hi, Joe Gigante, host of the nationally syndicated Regular Joe Show based right here in Wisconsin. You deserve a state representative who represents you. Your current representative, Robin Voss, is